Hello and welcome to this little Magrunner Stark Pulse impression video. And this will be my impression on the game after completing the main campaign on the only difficulty that there is, and it took me, I would guess it took me around 6 to 8 hours, but I didn't time it, so I'm not completely sure about that. Magrunner Dark Pulse is at its core a puzzle game, and the way it is set up is that you are presented with the puzzle chamber, and your goal is to get to the exit by solving some puzzle. And when you do that, you are presented with a new puzzle chamber, and so on and so on. Now, the puzzle mechanics that all the puzzles in the game are based on is that you can assign objects in the puzzle chambers certain states. So you have two different states, and if two objects share the same state, then they attract each other, while they, on the other hand, repel each other if they have different states. The visual representation of this was in my playthrough red and green, but you can choose different colors if you are colorblind. Now, this puzzle mechanic works well enough. It's simple enough so that you quite quickly can get the hang of it, but it still lets the developers create some quite complex puzzles with multiple stages and stuff like that. Okay, so what did I like about the game? Well, firstly, I really enjoyed the visuals and also the different environments in the game. So early on, you're in these quite sterile and clean environments. Now, I really adore environments like this. I love being in them. But later on, they really spice them up, and the environments are actually extremely varied in this game. And there are basically three different archetypes, but they're actually all kind of cool looking, and I really enjoy them. And another thing that I quite enjoyed about the game was the story. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the story was good, but it was enjoyable and it was interesting, and it did do its part of keeping you interested in the game. With that said, it's not good, but I enjoyed it for what it was, at least. Another thing that I liked is that the game do have some quite different levels every now and then, and even though these levels are based on the same puzzle mechanics as the rest of the levels, they do still feel different, and that is actually kind of important because the game is kind of long, and I will talk about it later, but it does have some pacing problems, and this really helps keeping the game reasonably fresh at least. And there is quite a lot of content in this game, which is always a good thing in itself. And there are also quite a lot of checkpoints in the game, so you don't have to redo entire sections over and over again. And lastly, the basic puzzle mechanics in the game is competent and it works well enough. Okay, so let's talk about the stuff that I disliked about the game. So, my absolutely biggest complaint about this game is the pacing of the single player campaign, and it's basically just too much of it. So in the middle and in the end game section, there is just too much puzzles, and it's just puzzle after puzzle after puzzle, and it just becomes boring, and it also messes up the story really bad because you never reach any climax in the story because something interesting happens. Oh man, time for puzzle chamber, and puzzle chamber, and then something interesting happens, and so on and so on. And the pacing it's just off. Now, I'm not complaining that there is too much content, that would be silly, but they could have taken some of the levels in the main campaign and put them in some challenge mode or something like that. But to be fair, perhaps I wouldn't complain so much about this if I enjoyed the puzzle mechanics more than I did. So as I said before, I thought that the puzzle mechanics worked well enough, but wasn't fun enough or good enough or challenging enough to carry this many puzzles after each other. So yeah, I think that the developers could have paced the single player campaign a bit better. Okay, so I'm going to whine a little bit about the puzzle design now. So one thing that annoyed me a bit is that sometimes I found myself doing stuff not because I had any idea of why I was doing it, but it became apparent that it was the only thing that I could do to progress. And I don't really enjoy that. I think that you should have an idea of what you are trying to do and why you are trying to do it, because otherwise you just feel like a monkey that, do the only thing you can do and so on. But perhaps it was just me being dumb, but hey, I didn't enjoy that. So sometimes the goals are a bit unclear. You know that you are supposed to get to the next area, but sometimes you can't see the bloody door, and there are just a big number of different objects that you can interact with, and yeah, you just have to roll with it and hope that you will figure it out later on. Another thing that bugged me a bit is that at some of the larger puzzles at the end of the game, there are just so much preparation work for them. So when you screw up, like you fail at platforming, for instance, then you find yourself having to redo quite a lot of preparations. And even though the checkpoints are generous, it still means that you have to redo some parts over and over again, which can be a bit annoying. But the thing that annoyed me the most about the puzzle design is that at some certain puzzles I found myself not knowing what to do, and I tried every possible method and so on. And then I found some box that they had hidden in some corner of the puzzle chamber and so on. So basically, I was trying to finish the puzzle without all the ingredients, and I just find this annoying because sometimes they really do hide some of the components quite well, and it's not fun trying your best to solve a puzzle without all the ingredients. But I don't wish to sound too negative about the puzzle design, because overall I found them to be okay. But enough about puzzle design, let's whine about something else. So one thing that bugged me a bit was how much cutscenes they use in the game, and they use quite a lot of cutscenes in moments when they really didn't need to. They could just have let you run around freely and so on. And that is a bit annoying, and especially so later on in the game, when they actually did the unforgivable sin of placing checkpoints before cutscenes, and then you can't skip cutscenes. I don't know why they do this, I mean, come on. But that was a bit annoying. And lastly, just some minor annoyances, was that sometimes I found that the mechanics didn't work as I would imagine that they should work, but then perhaps I didn't just get them. And lastly, in the later part of the game, you get that dog that you can place around. I won't spoil anything, but sometimes I found that the placement of this dog would be kind of annoying, that you could place him at certain surfaces and not at other surfaces. That was kind of undefined, and it could be a bit annoying sometimes. Okay, so I guess that was all of my thoughts on the game Magrunner Dark Pulse by, I think they're called Frogware, and I think that it is published by Focus Home Interactive. And overall, I think that I quite enjoyed the game, even though it sure has some flaws, and there are some things that I think that I could have done better. But still, I had an okay time with it. Now I think I paid 2 or 3 euros for it. Was it worth the price? Absolutely. Would I recommend it for a similar price? Absolutely. Okay. Thank you for watching this video, and bye bye bye.